the shift in what college sports looks like. It's only becoming more professionalized.
Welcome back to The Deal. I'm Jason Kelly alongside Alex Rodriguez. We could not be more excited to have Adam Breneman here with us. He's an analyst. He's an entrepreneur, former college football player. So much happening in this world, Adam. As the season gets underway, we are just thrilled to be talking to you. So welcome to the show.
I appreciate you guys having me on. Love the show. Love what you guys are doing. Alex, I've been a big fan for a long time. The amount of times I've looked at the A-Rod Corp website as you build out your company and showed it to my team and said, hey, I love what he's doing here. I'm trying to do it on a much smaller scale right now, but hopefully someday can achieve the things you have. And again, love the show. Love all the interviews you guys are doing.
Thank you.
So we're talking to you at a great time. You know, college football season is just in full swing. The first couple weeks have seen some incredible games. What to you are the big storylines, especially given sort of the business angle that we know you really embrace as you think about college football right now?
The biggest storyline in college football is just the money that's flowing into the sport. The money has shifted from, it used to be just the media networks and the schools getting the money. Now the players are getting paid as well. And there's been so much negativity, as you guys know, around athletes, student athletes getting paid in college athletics. But as we've looked at the product on the field, college football has never been stronger. The viewership's never been better. The game has never been better. The product on the field, as far as the talent level, has been better. There's been an effect with the NIL and the money where guys are staying in school longer. You have players who could have gone to the NFL that stay in school because they're making $2 million as a starting quarterback. Think of a guy like Drew Aller at Penn State, should have been a top 5 pick, but stayed for one more season at Penn State, now competing for a national championship. So for all the negativity and all the talk about NIL and should players get paid, and people saying football will never be the same, college football, it's not the college football I remember growing up. Well, it's better than it ever was. And in college football and the fan bases, the pageantry, there's a reason that college football games have better TV ratings than any other sport. It's because of how diehard these fans are, and I think NIL has only made that stronger.
Yeah, well, I mean, I got to just talk a little University of Miami because I'm going to geek out a little bit. We've suffered for a long time, and, I was telling Jace, I sit on the board at the University of Miami for the last 20 years, and we were fortunate to get back the quarterback from Georgia, which I think he got around $4 million. I've been really on a high because Notre Dame played Miami for the opener. I had to watch Catholic versus convicts. I'm all in it, right? Now, disappointment, or do we have a real shot with the University of Miami? Give me your thoughts.
Miami has a real shot. You look at the ACC, and Miami's the top team in the conference right now. I don't even think it's really that close. And you think about Carson Beck and how he's playing at quarterback. He's a guy who's played a lot of football. He has the experience. I also like a guy who's been through some crap in his career. It hasn't always been pretty. It hasn't always been good, but sometimes guys who have talent, but there's been issues for whatever reason, sometimes you just need a fresh start. Sometimes you just got to go somewhere and have someone new who believes in you. And that's what Miami's been for Carson Beck. I mean, he's a guy who played at Georgia, was a big recruit, so much excitement and talk every single year, never quite got to that pinnacle, and now has this fresh start at Miami. And you can see the confidence he's brought to that team. Like, he's brought a lot of confidence and swagger to this Miami program. The Notre Dame win, beating South Florida, who's a top 20 team last the week 3 of college football season. So I really think Miami's got a good roster. Mario Cristobal's built that team the right way. He built it in the trenches through high school recruiting, not just through the transfer portal. I love Miami this season, and their path to making the playoff isn't all that hard. They may not play a ranked team other than Florida State the rest of the schedule. So I'm a big believer in Miami right now. Now Carson Beck has to keep playing well, keep taking care of the football, and avoid some of those mistakes that have plagued him last season and the last couple of years. But I'm happy for Carson Beck more than anything else, because he needed a fresh start, and it's always cool to see the positive part of the transfer portal. You get a guy who gets to have that kind of second part of his career and thriving at his new school.
Love it.
So Adam, let's keep with this, because this is, to me, this is like the single most interesting business story in the world of sports is college sports right now. But when it comes to college football, Carson Beck, great story. We love to see it. he doesn't go to the NFL. You mentioned Drew Aller as well. What are the knock-on effects of this? What are the effects that maybe we should be thinking about from a business perspective, from the businesses of the individual teams and the schools? This world so intimately. Like, what are the things we may not be seeing that you're seeing as we think about all this money coming in?
The biggest shift that's happened in the last year or so in college sports, aside from just NIL as a whole, has been revenue sharing actually coming to college sports. So what's happening now is these college athletic programs can pay athletes directly out of the revenue they're getting from their media deals and through the athletic department. Every Division I program in college football, probably the same in basketball, has opted into revenue sharing where they have a salary cap, just like the NFL does, where they can pay their athletes. In year one, it's $20.5 million a year. But the interesting part is you still have NIL that's outside of that $20.5 million. And that's the business story that gets really competitive here. And how do you get to a level playing field? And that's where the frustrations come in for a lot of coaches. You have all these schools, let's just stick with the Big Ten, Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin, USC, all of them are saying, hey, we're going to pay our athletes $20.5 million a year. That's a revenue share agreement getting paid from the athletic department to the athlete. And they have to perform services for that, just like a normal contract would be. Now, the athletic department has to split that between sports. So I would assume probably 3/4 goes to football. Say 16 million of the 20 million goes to football. Now, what happens is when everyone pays their players $20 million, well, everyone's pretty much back at zero because there's no competitive advantage for any program. So what's happening is Ohio State says, well, we got to pay our guys more than Penn State pays their guys. We're competing for championships. So now you have what's really true NIL outside of the revenue sharing cap NIL, which is the businesses doing deals with the athletes. And what the arms race is right now is what schools can create true commercial NIL programs that get their athletes paid more than just the revenue sharing money. So it's some of these schools are trying to put together a pool of donors or businesses to say, we want you to do deals that are real NIL deals with all of our top athletes that we want to come in here so that the quarterback can make maybe $2.5 million instead of $2 million. And then you can compete in the transfer portal with all of them, which some coaches like, some coaches don't like. How do you make sure that doesn't become just pay for play where you kind of don't even have a salary cap anymore and you're just funneling money through donors to athletes like what was happening in the early days of NIL. So it's pretty chaotic, and the money's going to keep flowing in. And you guys know the amount of money that these teams are making on football and men's basketball and so women's basketball now a lot of places, that it is worth it for them to try to fund all this money to the athletes because the product is so great. The conferences are consolidating to get the better media rights, which means more money will flow back to the schools. So the money continues to get more and more massive in college football and college sports.
Adam, thank you for that. That was a very, very good explanation. I mean, it's moving so fast, and you said a lot. I just want to make sure that I get this part clear. So I'm clear on the 20.5 rev share, right? Mm-hmm. And that's split among all sports. And you said 3/4 will go to football. That sounds about right. Is there a cap outside of that? So in the situation of a quarterback, can you just spend unlimited amount of money? Can it go up to like another $40 or $50 million for the roster?
The short answer is yes, but the nuance in this is that the school is not allowed to facilitate that payment. So similar to Alex, when you played Major League Baseball, you had your contract with the Major League Baseball team, but you also could do a brand deal with Nike or Adidas or Pepsi or that's what's happening in college football. But because the difference is there's recruiting in college football. So you're not just drafting players and then trading them and then doing free agency. You're recruiting. So that's where pay for play comes in. You're now trying to recruit the players. So the more money you pay them, the easier it is to recruit. So these schools that have the $20.5 million cap, they're trying to get that incremental money above. And that's the gray area where this isn't happening. But for example, if Penn State has a massive donor, Terry Pagula, the owner of the Bills, I'm sure they'd love for him to be more involved in NIL, but say he wanted to be involved and he said, I could buy whatever roster we want here. So he could go just pay all these athletes through NIL deals, get them to go to their school. And who's to say who's to judge what the fair market value is of that deal? Because that's the nuance. To directly answer your question, Alex, the deal that's outside the cap has to be fair market value and go through a clearinghouse from the NCAA. There's a group called the College Sports Commission, which was put in place after the House settlement in college sports and after revenue sharing came in, that said anything that's outside of the revenue sharing cap has to be fair market value, has to be true commercial NIL, to avoid the schools just saying, hey, this donor, just pay this guy all this money to come to our school. But who's going to tell Phil Knight at Nike what fair market value is? He's going to say, I'll pay the guy whatever I want. It's fair. It's worth it to Nike and to me. So that's the nuance of it all. There's no cap on true NIL, because who's to tell an athlete you're not worth $3 million a year to this company? But the making sure that it stays fair is the biggest challenge right now facing college sports, and that's the arms race. I interviewed athletic director at Ohio State, and he straight up said the biggest arms race right now, it used to be facilities. Who has the nicest facility in college sports? Now it's who can build out the best true commercial NIL outside of their athletic department, and who can do it the fastest so that they have a recruiting advantage.
Well, I mean, this happened. So Alex's older daughter is a student at Michigan. I mean, Michigan played this brilliantly, right? I mean, they had a donor, who came in and essentially was able to pay their quarterback and woo him away from LSU, right? He was committed to LSU, and now he's at Michigan. He's the starting quarterback at Michigan. Do I have that right?
Correct. Yeah, Bryce Underwood. He's a great player. Going to be one of the best quarterbacks in college football, and Michigan got a bunch of donors together and just stole him away basically when he was in high school as a recruit. So the legality of all that was pre-revenue share. So that was when it was just straight NIL collectives. These schools weren't allowed to be part of it. It was what the donors were. The donors could be part of it. The donors could pool their money together through collectives and pay the athletes. So that's what happened with Bryce Underwood, and Michigan got their quarterback of the future.
Yeah. I mean, it's why, Alex, isn't it wild to think about? I mean, this is like so radically different. I mean, you must see it, Alex, even in, being on the board of Miami, like it totally changes the governance of a school. Like it couldn't be more different than it was.
Yeah, and Adam, it's interesting what you said about, players get more motivated because of the money. When I was 17, coming out of Miami, I was the number one pick in the country, and I signed for $1.3 million. And I agree with you, because I also had a coach that had an iron fist, and his name was Lou Piniella. And he never made you feel like you were the special kid on the block. It was in the contrary. And because of him, because of his coaching style, which it resembles like a Nick Saban, right? Like just a great coach, but very tough, all about fundamentals, made sure you were accountable at every inch of every single day of the game. And he has a big time print on my career. So the money was not a negative. It was actually a neutral or positive, like some of these athletes.
I would hear all the time from coaches, old school guys say, well, you pay the players $100, $1 million, $4 million a year. These coaches or guys who have kind of been around the system a while have said to me, well, if I got $1 million, I'd stop working. How is this going to motivate the players? They're just going to show up and get their check and go home? And I've found the exact opposite. The money has motivated these players even more. There's no better motivator to show up every day on time to practice, to put in the extra work, to want to perform well, to ensure that you're getting paid your $1 million a year contract you have with the school, and to also get that next contract, get the year 2 revenue share deal. If a player is making $200,000 one year, he's going to want to make $400,000 the next year. So I think it's actually enhanced the product in college football. It's made it all better. It's made it more well-rounded, where you also have more balance in the system now. I mean, college football, college athletics has been such a big business for everyone but the athletes for so long. And now, finally, the athletes can be part of that business. They can partake in the upside. They can get the reward for the hard work they're putting in. I think it's been a big positive, and it's really actually made the athletes work harder because there's a financial incentive at stake.
All right, so Adam, let's talk about the business you're building, or one of the businesses you're building, the college sports company. You found this a few years ago. Clearly, seeing part of what was happening, it's only accelerated since then. given how, using your word, chaotic it is, how do you build a sustainable business in this? And how much has it changed what you were trying to do as you're constantly, I'm imagining, sort of evolving what you're aiming for?
Yeah, the college sports company started based on really two pillars. One was that content is king and everyone wants to do content. I was just finding, as I was creating content myself and building a platform online, telling stories about football, breaking down the game, people were coming to me, athletes and college athletes and schools, and said, hey, we want content. How do we do content? We need to do content. At the same time, every school now and every NIL collective has a revenue issue. They're trying to figure out, how do we drive more revenue? Because think about it. Every school has a new $20.5 million bill they got to pay every year they didn't have last year. So all these schools are like, man, we need more money. How do we drive more revenue? And that's where kind of the epiphany came in, that the best way for schools to thrive in this era of college sports is to think and act like a media company. It's to create content with all the athletes they have currently at their schools. It's to create content with the former athletes that want to be part of the program. Think about how many former athletes want to be in media. Well, let's use them and let's build these school-specific media networks that we can then monetize to drive revenue for the school, for NIL, for paying the players themselves. So that's how we started. It's evolved since then. As you guys know, this landscape of college sports is crazy, and you have new legislation, new rules. But we work with schools all over the country and work with their athletes to build school-specific networks, media networks, have shows at each of those networks, and then we monetize it through sponsorship, advertising, events, experiences, e-commerce. Everything that a normal media company would do, and then we share that revenue with the school or with the NIL collective, and that's the solution for them. So the schools are getting brand building, their athletes get to be part of content, and they also are getting revenue on the back end. It's been fun. I mean, the world of college sports and sports itself has become really an asset class. And people want to invest in sports. People are excited about sports and college sports. I think the shift in what college sports looks like, it's only becoming more professionalized.
You know, Adam, it reminds me of how private companies are staying private longer, right? Because they can raise more capital. You don't have the quarterly earnings. CEOs can really think about long-term enterprise value versus like what's going to be great on the next quarterly call. I think about a player like Anthony Edwards, who plays with us, and he was the number one pick out of Georgia. He would have made probably, who knows, maybe tens of millions of dollars over the course of 4 years. And the whole course of the Timberwolves may have been completely different. I guess my question is, I'm sitting here in our facilities with the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Lynx, and as I think about how should we, I'm asking for your advice here, because you're right in the middle of college sports, should we be assessing players? Because if a player's making $3.5 million, is he going to have the same motivation to be great in the NBA or the WNBA? Because this is I think I can relate with players, but it's, like Jason said, radically different than when I played. How would you think about recruiting players?
I think athletes that are getting paid a ton of money in college are just as motivated as anyone else who is trying to make it with their career. I'm thinking of a football player specifically, I won't mention his name, that I talked to who made a comment to me. He made like $800,000 the one year he was in school, and all he was talking about was how hard he wanted to work because he wanted his next deal to be $2 million. And I just kept thinking, I kept coming back to that, because the average person, you would say, hey, this guy's 18 years old making $800,000. Like, he's just gonna, I mean, the things I would have done with $800,000 when I was 18 in college, like. But then I see this perspective, and it's like, man, like, you taste it a little bit, right? Like you get that taste in your mouth, and then you're around people who are making even more and more. And I think that's just human nature. Like, now that I'm post-playing in my business career, the more I'm around people who make more and more money, the more motivated I get. I'm like, oh, well, that guy figured out how to make that much money. Why can't I figure that out? I really think that you have these guys who make all this money in college. They know what the top echelon looks like. And I still think that they're going to want to get there, whether it's money motivation. I also think that if there's an athlete who was good enough in college to work their butt off, avoid distractions, and get to that pinnacle of college sports, they're going to have that same attitude in professional sports. That's in their DNA at that point. They're not going to say, hey, I made $4 million. I think I'm going to just ease out. Like that in their DNA is that there is greatness within them. So I think it's finding those guys. The guys who can have consistent excellence in college, despite how much money they made, are ones that are going to be great professionals. I do think that there is a new shift in sports where, like when I was playing football, if I would have told my coaches that I wanted to like start a podcast or have a business on the side, they would have like laughed me out of the room, right? It would have been like, no, like Bill O'Brien was my head coach at Penn State. He would have been like, dude, like you just messed up that play on third down. You're not starting a podcast. Like learn your playbook. Where like nowadays it's way more accepted, and I think it should be. Like where athletes, it's cool to invest as an athlete. It's and Alex, you've been a big part of that, I think. Like the shift in that athletes are entrepreneurs, athletes are businesses, athletes create content, athletes can be venture capitalists and can start businesses and can invest in their hometown and can buy real estate. All that is cool now, and it has shifted completely. And I think that's an amazing thing for the athlete, because for a long time, it was almost, no matter what your sport was, it was kind of like, hey, if you talk about that, it's kind of like you're not focused on your sport, and you better just shut up and play well on Saturday or play well on Sunday.
So, Adam, and I'm trying to figure out the best way to ask this question, because I've been thinking about this so much. The whole notion of, you went to Penn State, had a great career there. You played for a great coach in Bill O'Brien, you just mentioned. I think about going back to something we mentioned earlier. I love Georgia Tech football. I love Brent Key. I love Haynes King, the quarterback. This is a guy who's been there for several years. In the case of Haynes King, you have a lot of situations where quarterbacks especially, but other players as well, especially, wide receivers and whatnot, they get a better deal, they move on. There is not the continuity within a program. This is something that is candidly like the transfer portal, so sort of shifting gears, has chased a lot of even very successful college coaches, out of the game. Nick Saban essentially sort of threw his hands up, and there have been other examples of that. He is sort of the most, the best known. What do you think about that? This essentially sort of unlimited free agency that's happening, is that going to be how it is going forward? What do you think?
Yeah, it's a great question. The transfer portal has gotten absolutely bonkers. Every coach stays up at night having nightmares about it. Like anything in business, in life, things were so far in one direction, right? They were so far in favor of the coaches and the administrators and the media companies and anti-player, that when you get that far out of whack, a lot of times you can overcorrect the other way.
Yeah.
And I think what's happened in college sports is we've overcorrected in benefit of the players. Like we've gotten to the point where players can transfer as many times as they want. There's multiple transfer portal windows in college football. There's not binding contracts for the players. Like if the players are going to get paid $2 million a year, like there should be a contract that they play in the bowl game, and there are now with revenue sharing, that they show up on time to practice. They're not getting that check if they skip a week of workouts, all those kind of things, just like you would in professional leagues. So that has changed with revenue sharing, where there are now binding contracts with the players.
Interesting.
But the biggest piece has been the transfer portal windows. Those contracts still don't keep players from transferring. But now the issue in college football has been that there's multiple transfer portal windows. So what's been happening is there's a window after the season in college football where players can transfer. And there's also a window after spring practice before the season starts. And what's been happening is that because of the two windows, it really disincentivizes coaches to be honest with their players. Because if you have a coach who has a quarterback battle going on at a major program, his obligation is to protect his team, to do what's the best thing in interest of his program. Yes, he may have a great relationship with the player, but his best interest is making sure that all the best players stay on his team. Why would that coach name any starters until that transfer portal closes? So a lot of coaches may have a quarterback battle. Hey, if they tell the backup quarterback that you're not going to be the starter this year, that guy's going to hop in the portal. So a lot of times you've seen this trend. There's like elongated battles of the top positions in college sports. And everyone's like, man, why hasn't school X named their quarterback yet? I'm like, because they don't want the guy to transfer. So they haven't announced the starter. There's this perception of a quarterback competition still to the public and to the team when the coach may really know. So that's the number one thing coaches are asking for is let's get one transfer portal window.
Right.
Let's make it right after the season. And after the season, you decide. You are either at your school for the next year or you're transferring. And then if you transfer, you get to go through spring practice. You're there all off season. But get rid of this window, this transfer window that's after spring practice, which really would help coaches, administrators, general managers build their rosters better. It would help college sports. But that's an example of how we kind of overcorrected for the players. And now we're getting back to the center where it seems to make more sense.
So, Adam, your words, and I agree. This is so confusing, and I'm sure our listeners, while you're doing an incredible job describing it, they're still a little confused, right? Every
What's he talking about?
Every cocktail party you go to, everyone, and Jace, you know that because we've been in some of these conversations. Okay, where does this go? What's NIL? How does it really work? Is it a binding contract? I guess my question, to oversimplify it, in 5 years, where does this land? Is there going to be some type of a salary cap? Is there sometimes of a formal union that protects the players, that the commissioners can speak to the union at a very high level, macro, and say, you got to do X for the player, you got to protect the school, we got to do what's best for the sport? Where does it land in 5 years?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question. One of the things that was really eye-opening to me was I was at the College Football National Championship game this past year. Every conference is meeting about the future of college sports. The school presidents are all meeting about the future of college sports. There's the SEC coaches meeting, and there's all these meetings going on. But guess who has no seat at the table? The players. There's no one representing the players at the table. Just like the NFL has the NFLPA and the MLB has the MLBPA, and they have their entity or their representation who's negotiating on their behalf. The athletes don't have that in college sports. And the biggest reason they don't is because college sports in general, administrators, the NCAA has refused to call student athletes what they really are. They're employees. They're employees of the school. And that's a dirty topic in college sports right now. There's a lot of debate around, are they employees? And if they are employees, you open up this can of potential lawsuits and all these issues with the even past athletes that weren't employees but maybe should have been classified as employees. So there's a big push from a lot of groups to keep the athletes as student athletes in college sports. My take, to answer your question directly, Alex, is that in 5 years, we will classify college athletes as employees, and college athletes will have collective bargaining and representation at the table. There will be collective bargaining for what revenue share contracts look like. There will be group licensing deals similar to NFLPA and the other players associations. That's really the cleanest solution. It's the solution that scares everyone the most. Mm-hmm. It's the solution that scares administrators, athletic directors, and conference commissioners because they don't want to deal with the athletes being employees. But as you guys are hearing about college sports, doesn't it just seem like, hey, this is an employee model? Like the players are getting paid to perform a service. The longer we refuse to call them that, the more complicated it gets. You're like, well, are there contracts? Are there not contracts? Are we able to fire the athlete? Are we not? Can we cut them? Like, how does it actually work? I think that's kind of the elephant in the room in all these conversations is, are the athletes employees? And I think the notion that they are currently student athletes is a falsehood. I mean, they're not. You got college football players making millions of dollars, basketball making millions of dollars. They're not student athletes. They are, yes, some are getting a degree and some are focused on that, but a lot of them, the majority, are focused more so on getting a paycheck and maximizing their value to the school and making the most amount of money, which they should. I would have done the same thing if I was in their shoes.
Yeah. I had one more question that, as you were talking, Adam, it really strikes me, which is, there's so much focus from the beginning of the season, from long before the beginning of the season now, on the college football playoff. It's expanded. It's probably going to continue to expand. At some point, and this is sort of building on what you just said, does big-time college football break off of the NCAA? Like, do we have a world where we essentially create, for lack of a better term, NFL Junior, and it's Big Ten, SEC, maybe part of the ACC and Notre Dame? What is the right business model for college football going forward, given the amount of money and given that the playoff is already this separate entity?
Yeah, well, the number one thing is the NCAA has shown a lack of ability to govern anything in college sports. I mean, they were in this position because the NCAA refused to act on what they knew was coming down the pipe for a long time with NIL. Clearly, the NCAA isn't the answer for governance and for the organizational structure of college sports. I also think that a lot of these major these major sports, like football, for example, basketball, baseball, women's basketball, if I asked you who's in charge of football, who's in charge of college football, like you wouldn't know who's actually in charge. Like, is it Greg Sankey, the commissioner of the SEC? Maybe Greg Sankey is the person who's ultimately in charge of college football because he's the most powerful person. But he's also in charge of lacrosse and swimming and diving and field hockey and all these other sports. There's no leader of college football looking out for the interests of college football, which is different than the interest of college basketball. It's different than the interests of everywhere else. But we have this set of rules that is kind of the same for each sport. It's just governed under NCAA athletics. So what I think the future should look like is college football breaks off. Maybe men's basketball does as well. The major conferences, Big Ten and the SEC and football, break off and self-govern themselves and break off from the other Group of Five programs in college football. These conferences will continue to expand. We've seen tons of conference realignment and conference expansion. It's not going to stop. I mean, these conferences want the best media rights deals, and the way you do it is you get national, you go multiple different time zones and media markets, and you collect all these schools, and then you sell your media rights to these networks. And the better the games are, the better. If you only had the Big Ten and the SEC playing each other every year, or one power conference in football, say they merged, the amount of revenue from media dollars would be even higher because you wouldn't be playing who did Miami play? Bouthane Cookman or someone? You wouldn't have these like low-level games that no one's watching on TV games. That you get no revenue for. So you would have all these great games, more revenue. So I think the solution is continuing to expand the conferences, and then the two power conferences eventually go off on their own as the premier college football entity, if you will, not governed by the NCAA.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely where we're headed. And the good news is that college football will still exist in other forms as well. And we're still we love the game and people will keep playing it. All right, lightning round, 5 questions. We're gonna bounce it back and forth. First thing that comes to your mind, I'll start. Then Alex will pick up. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Okay. What's the best piece of advice you've received on deal making or business?
I would say that persistence can get you a long way. Just willpower. I believe that human beings underestimate their ability to will something to happen, and I think that works a lot in deals as well.
Who's your dream deal-making partner?
Can I say Alex Rodriguez, or is that?
Sure. You would be the first one.
Yeah, I would say I would go A-Rod, or I would go. I'm a big Gary Vaynerchuk guy too. I got to have him on my podcast.
Okay.
So I like Gary. Yeah.
Which team do you want to see win a championship more than any?
Penn State.
What's your hype song before a big meeting or a negotiation?
Ooh, Meek Mill, Dreams and Nightmares.
Oh, good one. All right, and finally, what's your advice for someone listening who wants a career like yours?
I think similar to what I said in the beginning is that you have the ability to will something to happen, and that the number one underrated skill set is proactivity, being proactive and not waiting for direction or waiting for someone to tell you what to do, but just get up and take action. Action is the way that you make something happen. And I think throughout my career, I've learned that if you just take action, the luck follows.
I love it. All right. Well, you are a true multi-hyphenate. Adam Breneman, entrepreneur, media personality, TV analyst, a former All-American tight end. You run the college sports company. You've got a podcast called Next Up. So we love following your career. We really enjoyed having you, and thanks so much for your time.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it. It was fun.